Have you ever asked yourself why some of your biggest regrets came from the moments you ignored your instincts about someone? Why you stayed too long, gave too much, or trusted too easily, especially when it came to women who felt like everything at first, only to leave chaos in their wake? This isn't about blame. This is about waking up. Because what if the very thing that pulled you in, that sweetness, that vulnerability, that need for saving, was never real to begin with? What if it was a mask, a test, or worse, a trap? Schopenhauer wasn't trying to be popular when he said that women can be the devil in disguise. He wasn't trying to win hearts. He was trying to pull the veil off something most men don't want to see, that what we call love might just be nature using us, and that the woman we chase might not be who we think she is. In fact, she might be everything your loneliness dreamed of, and everything your downfall will regret. But here's what no one told you. You were programmed to fall for it. From childhood, from movies, from society, you were taught to protect her, worship her, obey her needs, and silence your own, all while slowly handing over your power piece by piece. And the moment you finally pull back, the moment you stop playing the part, that's when the mask cracks. That's when the real game begins. This isn't about hate. It's about truth. Because until you see clearly, you will keep bleeding energy, time, and soul into illusions that were never meant to feed you, only to feed off you. Now ask yourself, are you ready to see what's behind the disguise? Or will you keep falling for the same performance, one lifetime after another? Most men don't fall in love with a person. They fall in love with an image, an idea, a carefully constructed illusion that feels like truth because it touches the exact place they feel most empty. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. He said that behind every desire, there is a blind force, the will, pushing us forward without mercy, without reason. And nowhere is this will more deceptive than in the chase between man and woman. What you think is love might be nothing more than nature manipulating you to serve its agenda. And she is the carrier of that illusion. Look closer. The softness, the mystery, the way she makes you feel like the center of the universe. It's not random. It's design. Not hers necessarily, but life itself, using her to pull you in. And when you're pulled in, you stop thinking. You stop asking questions. You give. You fix. You chase. You mold your identity around her presence. And by the time the illusion starts to fade, it's already too late. You've given away your power without even realizing it. This doesn't make her evil, but it does make her dangerous, especially to a man who doesn't understand himself. The devil in disguise isn't someone who attacks you outright. She's the one who lets you build your prison with your own hands. She just holds the mirror. You do the rest. Schopenhauer warned us that nature is not here to make us happy. It's here to keep the species going. And love, especially in its early glow, is nature's most effective trick. You think you found meaning. What you've actually found is a program, a cycle, a setup, and until you see it, you will keep falling for it. So the real question is, when will you stop chasing illusions? She doesn't need to speak to influence you. She doesn't need to ask for power, because in most cases, it's already been handed to her the moment she walks into the room. Schopenhauer understood this. Beauty is not a virtue. It's a weapon of nature, a tool to control male behavior without force. And yet, most men still confuse attraction with truth. They assume that because something pulls them in, it must be good. But in reality, it's just the will playing dress-up. It's instinct packaged as romance, survival disguised as love. The modern man thinks he's evolved. He swipes, he dates, he posts. But deep down, He's still moved by the same ancient impulse. A look, a smile, a body. That's all it takes to forget reason, to override boundaries, to silence instinct. Not because he's weak, but because he's been trained to respond to appearance as if it were substance. And this is where the game begins, not with manipulation, but with misperception. You don't even know you're being played because you don't know the rules. She doesn't have to lie. Your mind lies for her. You fill in the blanks. You project purity, softness, loyalty. But you're seeing what you want to see, not what's there. You see comfort, but she's chaos. You see peace, but she's a test. And you give your trust to a mask worn perfectly. Because no one taught you that appearances are currency, that the one who controls the image controls the outcome. And by the time reality appears, the damage is done. You've invested, you've attached, you've convinced yourself she was different, but she wasn't. You just never questioned what you were really seeing. Now ask yourself, do you trust your eyes, or have they already been trained to betray you? She doesn't need to be powerful to have control. She just needs to be believed. And in a world where most men are starving for connection, belief comes cheap. Schopenhauer saw it long before the noise of social media and modern relationships. Women are not just born into survival. They're trained to perform it. Not because they're evil, but because it works. The performance becomes protection. Manipulation becomes instinct. The mask becomes identity. And the most dangerous part? You never question it, because you've been taught to see the mask as truth. The feminine mask is soft, emotional, selfless. But behind it, there's often calculation, subtle, silent, and effective. She cries to disarm. She flatters to redirect. She appears fragile to make you feel strong, needed, important. But the moment you stop playing your part, the mask shifts. The charm becomes contempt. The softness turns sharp. Because the mask wasn't love. It was leverage. A carefully adjusted mirror reflecting only what you wanted to see. Modern men are not defeated by physical force. They're defeated by emotional influence. By the invisible pressure to stay, to explain, to comfort, to fix what they didn't break. And every time you give in, the mask stays on. Because as long as you're reacting, she's winning. As long as you're defending, she's directing. And as long as you're explaining yourself, you're not thinking clearly. You're not crazy for falling into it. The mask was made for you, designed to match your insecurities, your guilt, your need to be useful. But here's the truth. Once you learn to see beyond the performance, the illusion collapses. And once it collapses, the game is over. The real question is, are you ready to stop playing the role she wrote for you? Or will you keep performing for someone who never saw the real you? Every downfall begins with a craving. Not for love, not for connection, but for relief. From loneliness, from silence, from the feeling of being unseen. That's where she enters. Not as a savior, but as an answer to a question you never voiced out loud. Schopenhauer knew this wasn't romance. It was biology dressed up as destiny. The will wants to survive, and it uses your desire to blind you. You think you're chasing her, but in truth, you're being dragged by something far older than logic. Desire doesn't ask if she's right for you. It doesn't care about her character, her intentions, her truth. It only wants one thing: to possess, to conquer, to escape the emptiness inside. But here's the trap. Once you get her, the spell doesn't break. It deepens. You start living for her approval. You start fearing her absence. And before you even notice, you're negotiating your soul just to keep her close. She doesn't need to demand control when your craving gives it freely. That's the tyranny of desire. It makes you obedient without force. You don't protect your boundaries because you're afraid to lose the fantasy. You say yes when you should say no, not because you're weak, but because you're addicted to how she makes you feel when she's pleased. And in that addiction, she becomes your center, your god, your captor. Desire is not love. It's not intimacy. It's not connection. It's the will disguising survival as romance, conquest as commitment. And unless you step back and see it for what it is, you'll keep mistaking hunger for loyalty, obsession for passion, and slavery for love. So ask yourself this: are you in love with her, or are you just terrified of the silence that begins the moment she walks away? You don't realize the cost until it's too late. At first, she feels like inspiration. You feel more alive, more focused, more driven. But over time, that attraction begins to feed on you. What was once energy becomes exhaustion. What felt like motivation becomes pressure. You start compromising, adjusting, censoring yourself, not out of love, but out of fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of being alone again. Fear of going back to that quiet space where no one is watching, no one is admiring, no one is validating you. Schopenhauer understood that attraction is never neutral. It comes with a price. And the higher the intensity, the heavier the toll. You might pay with your time, your attention, your peace. You might pay with your self-respect, because what you don't realize is that attraction is often a transaction. She gives you the feeling of being desired. You give her access to your decisions, your mind, your resources. And the more you desire her, the more you give away without even noticing. You start to bend, you soften your edges, you overthink every move, because now you're not just trying to be yourself, you're trying to be enough. And in doing so, you lose the very thing that made you attractive to begin with: your clarity, your stillness, your sovereignty. That's the hidden cost. Attraction that isn't grounded in awareness doesn't lift you, it drains you. It's not about rejecting beauty or connection. It's about asking what it's costing you. Are you building, or are you bleeding? Are you choosing her, or are you afraid of what life looks like without her reflection? Because sometimes the price of being desired is forgetting who you were before she looked your way. And that is a cost no man should pay. From the moment you're born, you're trained to see her as sacred, the giver of life, the one you owe everything to. And while that reverence can be rooted in love, it can also be twisted into something far more dangerous. Schopenhauer didn't romanticize motherhood. He stripped it bare. He saw it not as a divine calling, but as nature's most efficient trap. Because when woman becomes the vessel of reproduction, she's placed on a pedestal, not for who she is, but for what she represents. The continuation of the species. You're told to honor her, protect her, serve her. And in that programming, you stop asking questions. You stop seeing the human behind the role. The cult of motherhood turns femininity into something untouchable, something you're never allowed to challenge, even when it's destructive. You're told she knows best, that her love is unconditional, that her instincts are pure. But what if they're not? What if her care comes with control? What if her nurturing hides a need to dominate? And what if your guilt is the leash? This isn't about denying the beauty of mothers. It's about seeing how easily reverence becomes submission. Because once you internalize the belief that she deserves your sacrifice, she doesn't even have to ask for it. You'll offer it automatically. That's how the pedestal becomes a prison. That's how respect becomes silence. That's how love becomes obligation. Schopenhauer warned that nature doesn't care about your personal happiness. It only cares that you obey its mission. Survive, reproduce, repeat. And by worshiping the mother without discernment, you end up surrendering your clarity, your independence, your voice. So now ask yourself, do you love her for who she is, or for what you were trained to believe she must be? What if the most powerful feeling you've ever known was never real to begin with? What if love, the kind that overwhelms you, consumes you, drives you to sacrifice everything, was nothing more than a trick played by nature to get you to do its bidding? Schopenhauer didn't see romantic love as something beautiful. He saw it as strategic, a lie dressed up as meaning, an instinct given just enough emotional sugar to keep you chasing it again and again without ever questioning why. You think you're choosing her, but it's not choice. It's compulsion. It's the will, that blind force underneath everything, pushing you to attach, to pursue, to protect, even when it destroys you. You mistake that fire in your chest for destiny, when it's really biology manipulating your every step. Love doesn't ask you to see clearly. It demands that you lose yourself, and you do, willingly. You abandon your friends, your purpose, your peace. You call it passion, but it's addiction. She doesn't even have to do anything extraordinary. All she has to do is exist in the right form at the right time, and you're hooked. You imagine a future. You place your worth in her hands. You write stories in your mind of who she could be and ignore every sign of who she actually is. That's the trick, not hers, life's. And by the time the illusion fades, by the time reality hits, you've already built your identity around her presence. Schopenhauer was right. Love is a trap wrapped in poetry. It doesn't come to complete you. It comes to use you. And unless you learn to see it with sober eyes, you'll keep calling your own submission a miracle. So ask yourself now, are you really in love? Or are you just under the spell? She doesn't need chains to control you. All she needs is your empathy, your guilt, that soft part of you that wants to protect her, even when she's the one causing the damage. Schopenhauer understood this subtle form of domination. The world sees her tears and calls it sensitivity. But in reality, those tears often hold more power than a scream. They don't just ask for care, they demand it. And if you hesitate, you're made to feel cruel, heartless, cold. That's how emotional blackmail works. It doesn't force you. It makes you feel like you owe her your soul. The most effective manipulation doesn't look like control. It looks like need, like fragility, like the unspoken threat that if you don't show up, she'll break, and it'll be your fault. So you rush to fix it. You explain yourself when you've done nothing wrong. You comfort her while your own mind is on fire. And slowly, without noticing, you abandon your own center just to hold her together. But here's the truth. If your presence is only valued when it comes with sacrifice, that's not love. That's dependency in disguise. And she might not even realize she's doing it. That doesn't make it less real. Emotional blackmail isn't always calculated. It can be instinctual, learned, reinforced by a culture that rewards her pain and questions your silence. And you've been taught that being a man means being available, that strength means being unshakable in the face of emotional storms. But strength isn't surrender. Real strength is knowing when your empathy is being used against you. So ask yourself this: how many times have you mistaken guilt for love? And how much longer will you keep paying for peace that never truly comes? They told you to be a gentleman, to open doors, to apologize first, to give her the last word, the soft seat, the moral high ground. From childhood, you were trained to put her first. Her comfort, her feelings, her approval. And every time you did, they called you a good man. But what they never told you is that chivalry, when unchecked, becomes submission dressed as virtue. You're not honoring her, you're erasing yourself. Slowly, quietly, completely. Schopenhauer didn't believe in modern fairness. He saw through the illusion. He knew that when a man puts himself second long enough, he forgets what it means to stand. And what began as respect turns into one-sided service. You listen when she complains. You nod when she blames. You apologize for your tone, for your silence, for your needs. And in the name of being noble, you teach her that her feelings matter more than your truth, that you will bend no matter the cost. But here's the twist. No one respects a man who makes himself small, not even the woman he does it for, because what is always available loses value. What never pushes back loses presence, and what constantly yields becomes invisible. Chivalry without limits turns you into a background character in your own life, and she won't thank you for it. She'll get bored, detached, cold, not because you weren't kind, but because you were never firm. A man without a boundary becomes a servant, not a partner. And the price of being endlessly agreeable is that you forget how to say no, how to walk away, how to protect your soul. So now ask yourself, are you being kind or are you being used? And how long will you trade your backbone for a pat on the head? You think you found peace when she finally says, "I'm not like the others." You breathe a little deeper. You let your guard down. You tell yourself that this time it's different. But the illusion of safety is more dangerous than any obvious threat, because it doesn't wake you up, it lulls you to sleep. Schopenhauer warned that when desire meets comfort, man loses awareness. He confuses familiarity with trust. He calls stillness stability, when in fact, it's just the eye of the storm. She'll give you affection, just enough to keep you close. She'll speak softly, agree with you, even support your mission for a while. And that brief harmony will feel like salvation. But it's not peace. It's a pause, a delay. Because no one can fake alignment forever. Eventually, the truth leaks out. Her expectations rise. Her tone shifts. Her boundaries become laws, while yours are negotiable. And slowly, what felt like safety becomes control. Subtle, gentle, absolute. You stop sharing your real thoughts, not because she told you not to, but because you're afraid of disturbing the peace. You don't even notice that your edges have been dulled, your instinct silenced. You're not at war, but you're not free either. That's how the illusion works. It doesn't scare you. It comforts you into obedience. Safety isn't given, it's earned. And if you have to shrink to keep someone calm, you're not safe, you're contained. A caged version of the man you once were. So ask yourself this. Do you feel peace because you're fully seen and respected? Or because you've learned how to avoid her triggers? One feels like freedom. The other feels like walking on eggshells disguised as love. Know the difference before it's too late. She says she wants honesty, but only if it doesn't threaten her comfort. She says she wants a strong man, but only if that strength serves her. The moment your truth makes her uncomfortable, you're labeled cold. The second your standards challenge hers, you're called controlling. And if you ever dare to walk away, you're heartless, toxic, selfish. But here's the part no one says out loud. She doesn't want equality. She wants power without responsibility, influence without consequence, authority without resistance. And you were raised to hand it to her with a smile. Schopenhauer saw through this long before anyone dared to admit it. He knew that beneath the layers of charm and fragility was an instinct to manipulate, to mold, to win. Not always consciously, but always effectively. And the world lets it happen. In fact, it rewards it. If a man asserts himself, he's a threat. If a woman controls the narrative, she's empowered. This isn't balance. This is performance. One where only she gets to break, only she gets to feel, only she gets to rewrite the rules mid-game. You've been told to apologize for your nature, to explain your ambition, your silence, your logic, while she never has to explain her chaos. She can insult and cry in the same breath, and you're expected to comfort her after. She can withdraw love like a weapon and call it boundaries. And you, the man, are expected to understand, to be patient, to endure. But maybe it's time to stop pretending this is mutual. Maybe it's time to stop calling this love when it looks more like strategy. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to ask the one question no one seems to ask her. If you want a man so badly, why do you keep trying to change him?